All right. Thank you all for tuning in. This is a live episode of the Syncrets To Success podcast. This is a podcast where I am talking about sync licensing, trailer music, networking, music business, all things music and life and how that all blend together. This podcast is sponsored by the great team over at ASTS. They make some great plugins for music creators like me and you to use in our music production. So go to ASTS. If you go to YouTube and check out the Syncrets To Success podcast, you can check out the links in the description where you can get a discount code on the ASTS products and stuff like that. Today we have an incredible guest, Luke from I won't say where he's from. I don't know if he wants to tell people where he lives. I won't say where he's from, but Luke is a composer. He's worked on projects, composed music for Shark Week, composed music for Blood Brothers, Consequences, Star Wars, products and franchises. So glad to have you in the building. For those that are watching live on Zoom, feel free to drop any questions in the comments throughout, and we'll get to those questions throughout our chat. First, Luke, do an intro of yourself. Who are you? Where are you? If you want to say where you are, what do you do? Let people know. How are things going in your world?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's always great to be in a conversation and chatting and hanging out, and always have a great time. And as you already mentioned, I'm a composer and I'm based in the Atlanta area. I'll tell people that. And so I've been scoring films for 10 years. I've been in sync licensing for this is my fourth year in sync, actually, full 3 years already, but this is like actually in the fourth year. And so I'm part of different communities, trying to make sure that I plug in, make a difference, teach, and make sure everybody kind of kind of comes up together in a community fashion for sync licensing, because I really believe in everybody kind of going through it together, sharing things, learning together, and just kind of, keep that kind of vibe going. I really like that. So, and you've done a great job of doing that with, obviously the community.
Thank you. Yeah.
And, it's always great to, see all the posts come out,
Mhm.
welcome Wednesdays, talent Tuesdays, drop a link Friday, all those things.
Yeah. It all like it's like okay, to seeing other people's journey because for me the best well one of the best ways for me to learn is to teach. So when I post something, then I might get professionals who've been doing it for a decade like you. They might say, oh no, that's not exactly how things are today, or that's not exactly right, or how I do it. And then I don't mind being corrected or, being shown what is a different way or the right way, or maybe I say something that's not exactly, and learning from people that have been doing it for 10 plus years. So thank you for taking time and sharing your knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
let's start here. Can you share bro, I mean, 10 years as a composer, I'm sure you've learned some things along the way. How was your journey, let's say 11 years ago? What was your journey getting into
Ooh.
composing music? How did you get started?
So, okay. So it's kind of like a funny story
Yeah.
because, I'll go back a little bit farther and then I'll jump forward real fast. So back in 97, I was actually in school as a concert pianist major.
Ah,
So then, October 1st, 97, had a head-on collision, 4-year recovery, went into IT after I recovered, and then back to 2012, real fast forward, right? I said it was going to be fast. Okay.
yeah.
So, so in 2012, I had been talking about, like, man, I really wanted to get a computer and figure out this, making music in the DAW thing. And I've been talking to my wife about it. And she's always like really supportive. She's always been like the number one support structure outside of other family members. And she basically was like really encouraging. She was like, you know what? It was June. She goes, why don't you just get it and start messing around with it? Because I don't like to just pull the trigger on purchases. I'm like over analytical because I come from an IT background and that kind of thing. So you know about that.
Yeah.
And so finally in June, I bought it and then I took a year to just mess around with it and learn. And
Mm.
then I started scoring in 2013.
Okay.
Right.
And when you say started scoring, what was that first thing? How did you get whatever the gig was or the project? Was it um out the gate
So
Star Wars or what was it
yeah,
when
no,
it
no,
first
no,
came?
no. So I had this, I don't know, I guess I saw something on social media that students from SCAD were looking for like somebody to write music or something.
Okay.
And a light bulb went off and I was like, ooh, maybe that would be a great relationship for me to just score student films, right?
Okay.
And I was
Yeah.
just starting. I had no idea. Now looking back on it, it's like, yeah, duh, right? It's like,
Yep. Yep.
it's like,
Yep.
but when you're first starting and zero,
Hmm.
that was like a big epiphany moment for me. And so I reached out to this one guy who was working on Portal Origins.
Oh wow.
And so he gave me a shot. He knew my background. I had just started. He was like, just send me a mock up. Let me see what you can do. So I sent him a mock up, no cost, and just to
Mhm.
show him what I could do and kind of like to prove it to myself to see if I could even do it. Right. And so,
Mhm.
because I'm real big on proof of concept. And so that was how I
Yeah.
started. And then, I don't know, a few years later, I actually started taking actual classes with ThinkSpace,
Okay.
which is online where they give you a mentor, they give you an actual
Mhm.
curriculum outline. So you're going to school basically online
Yeah.
without, you're not getting a degree, but it's very structured, kind of go at your
Yeah.
own pace. And so I was doing it, I was still working in IT. And so, as you know, you have to balance you know, the current, what pays for the bills with what you really want to
Yeah.
do. And so it became a night and weekend thing. And like I said, family was really supportive. My wife was great. She was like, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll figure out the schedule. And so that's
Mhm.
kind of how I started student
Yeah.
films, working nights and weekends, scoring
Yeah.
until 2020.
Wow. So you were what month in 2020?
Um, I don't really remember. I think it was spring. I think it was
Okay. So
spring.
do you know if it was before or after the pandemic?
No, it was before the pandemic.
Before,
It was like right
okay.
before that. Like I guess it was the end of 19 is when I kind of really made the decision.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
able to let's do this full time.
And to make that jump, that is almost like fortuitous because the pandemic hit and then everyone was virtual. A lot of things shifted to remote work in the music space. People were composing films virtually, remotely. They weren't flying to LA or wherever to be on the spot, unless they really
That's
needed
right.
to be.
That's
uh
right.
but let's jump back because you mentioned you sent a mock-up to the guy for Portal Origins. How did you find that guy? Like, what was the sort of research process? I imagine LinkedIn wasn't where it is now.
No,
I don't know if you were using it then, so there was no, there was Facebook, but how did you find this person?
Facebook.
Oh, was it Facebook?
It
Okay.
was Facebook. Yeah, I was I was searching for I guess people that were making movies is what I was searching for. I was looking at directors, producers, doing keywords and stuff like that, looking for projects to get involved with to start the scoring process and start learning. And I had found this basically a casting call, and it didn't say we're looking for composers, but I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I really love Portal and what you're doing with this, film series because it ended up being two films."
Yeah.
And I said, "Are you looking for a composer?" And so he actually said, "Yeah, we were just talking about that." So it was like really good timing on that part. And so we just got talking about things, and we actually had a really good chemistry and a good flow. And eventually he liked the way I wrote stuff, and because I had some samples already.
Yeah, and another good point you bring up is finding work as a composer or music creator. Those, for the most part, those jobs are not posted on social media like LinkedIn or Facebook. Occasionally, there might be, hey, this company is looking for a composer, but very rarely is it, a filmmaker is looking for a composer for a film, will be posted. What they will do is they will ask their friends, or if they worked with a composer before, maybe ask that composer, and then if they're too busy, maybe the composer makes a suggestion. A lot of it is word of mouth. So if you get
Right.
an opportunity, uh, or it's doing like Luke just said, going in, you found someone at the company and you said, I really like this game. Um, there was no post about the composer. Be like, hey, are you looking for a composer? And it turns out the right time it was. They could have said no. And either way, if you didn't ask, the answer would have been no anyway. So I think
Yeah.
that's very similar. And what's great about that is that was let's say 11 years ago. It's still very similar today. Reaching out, making
Yep.
connections. It's a little easier with LinkedIn for me than Facebook. But you can reach out on LinkedIn, send messages out, be
Yeah.
active in groups, and find out who's working on what. There's so many resources out now, even with AI and everything. And then the other thing you mentioned I really like is the supportive family. Like we couldn't do any of this without, the supportive family letting us stay up all night and all weekend and, you
Right.
know, miss out on some things to focus on music. And you mentioned you went full time in 2020. So what was that transition like? Because for me, I do work full time, not in music. I work in the IT space still, for a great company, National Geographic. And but I do see, you know, eventually getting to full time, which is the personal goal with music. So what was that transition like for you? Was it scary? Was it just like, oh, I'm making enough here to leave here and go focus on music? How was that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because that was a big question for me when I was
Yeah.
gonna back in 2018. I was like, I could see things kind of developing because people were contacting me for work, and
Okay.
whether it was like I need strings for this or I need a film score for this, it was like other things. It wasn't just film scoring that started to
Mhm.
create an income, right? So it's never just one thing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm always happy when I get a film score because those are the most fun.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, it was definitely scary because, coming from IT, you have a nice, stable, income. You know where things are coming from. It's very clear. The industry is not as spread out as the music industry, as you know.
Yeah.
In IT, there's like one company, they get companies, you work for somebody, or you do the same thing with your own company or consulting gig. It's very cut and dry, like how the structure works,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But not with music. And so I was worried about like, how am I going to keep getting, work? And it's even to this day, it's a constant, okay, I need to always be thinking about the you know, next gig basically.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly reaching out, building new relationships, checking in with people. And,
Mhm.
that's still a big part of the day to day, reaching out to folks and, hey, what you guys up to? Let's just chat, let's get lunch, let's just hang out, because I'm still friends with like a lot of the people that I work with. So it's
Yeah.
not like they're just some random person that we never talk to again. We actually talk pretty frequently, like most of the directors and stuff. Like a couple of them have gone different directions. They're not doing films anymore, right? So
Yeah.
they went to
Yeah.
work maybe for a different company. And so that's understandable, but we still chat every now and then, just not as often as we used to, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
we're still friends. So
Yeah, and I think part of it is also going out to events. Like I don't actually know. Do you remember how did we meet? I don't remember. How did we meet each other? I don't know if it was through someone or
yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, is,
it's
like
like
you and I are
memory.
so active on social media
Yeah.
that it was probably social media.
Yeah, probably. And I know that I met you
Yeah.
in person this year at the Six Spotlight event in Atlanta. It was the first time I saw you in
Yes.
person.
That was so
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so it's like when you start seeing people that you've been talking to online, offline, or seeing um on virtual Zoom calls, and then all of a sudden, even if it is 2, 3 years later, I had someone at that event at Six Spotlight who I've known for uh over 10 years and never met him in person. Just things didn't line up. And I invited him to the event. He's the Grammy Recording Academy chapter president for Atlanta. I invited him down to the event and he came out, and that was like the first time I met him in person. And I've
Oh,
known him.
wow. That's awesome.
So you just never know, when people are where these connections can lead to, and eventually, if you end up working with them, great. But it's like you said, it's just building that friendship, like just going out to eat, or grabbing a drink, or just having a chat about music just offline, or plugins that are coming out. Sometimes it's just
Right.
we're just talking about family, and they're talking about IT. So it's
Just whatever, man. Yeah.
yeah, just life. For you, what would you say? How did you get to going from like portals to uh like doing Shark Week and Consequences and Blood Brothers and then eventually Star Wars? What is that trajectory of how you find those projects that you were working on? Were those
Yeah,
word of
that's
mouth? Were people finding your reel online? Yeah, if you want to talk about sort of each one of those and how those came about.
yeah, no problem. Also just to kind of like wrap up that going full-time thing is like I started in the sync licensing space in 2020, also
Okay.
January of 2020. Like I got signed by my first music, publishing company that December
Okay.
of 2019. And
19.
then so
Okay.
20, I started cranking out stuff for custom briefs. It's like
Right.
I started on custom briefs, right? And then
Yeah.
I reached out to another one, and then they needed two EPs. And so right away, I was already like sending stuff in and getting placements really quickly because of the customs, right? And so the passive income started to build up like, over the next year pretty
Yeah.
nicely already. So that kind of helped transition out. And so, but finding the trajectory, as you mentioned, like how did I kind of get into those different projects? It's kind of a mix of everything that you were kind of hinting at, like networking, people, recommendations, reaching out to people. And so putting all those things together, um, I was just introduced to different projects. And
Mhm.
I could say yes, I could say no. I got rejected. I had to turn some
Yep.
things down because it wasn't great timing. I was already working on too many things.
Yeah.
But I would say like Shark Week, for example, that came through a customs that I was working for with a music production company slash library.
Mhm.
So that kind of stuff was custom. So that's, goes directly to the showrunners and editors.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people on the sync side of things struggle because I've worked with way too many libraries over the last 2 years.
I
To
saw
to
that
prob
you're cranking them out
probably
though, man.
but yeah, but it's figuring out which ones are the ones that can have the most likelihood of a placement.
Right.
Um, I probably worked with about 30 libraries over the last 2 years. And it's like, okay, which ones are the ones actually getting placements? And it's also because I've worked with so many libraries, I see the same briefs from different libraries.
Right. You
And some
will.
of some
Yeah.
some of them claim to have the most direct approach or the exclusivity for the brief. And I'm like, I just saw this brief from 3 other libraries. So
Yeah,
how do
they
you
so they're gonna say they have, yeah, you've seen this already. They say they
yeah.
have the most direct path, but they're actually like they're 2 hops away or 1 hop away from the
Yeah.
actual, right.
Yep.
And
Yeah, so
so
that's the
you gotta watch
so
that.
so so when you get those placements and it was directly with the production company, um, and you're like making all this custom work, uh, you at least have a higher chance of it getting placed if it's with someone that has a direct relationship, as we mentioned, with the production company or the music supervisor or the director.
Right,
And
right.
that's part of the journey that I've been going on doing these events is building those relationships with those music supervisors so that I can be added to their list of 100 people they
Yep.
send an email to directly. So I do have that direct approach because I put them on stage at Sing Spotlight or at NAM or at an event. So it's like that extra little bit of uh, networking that comes into play there. Um, yeah, that's great. Can you talk about how? So I think we have sort of a kindred uh, uh, spirit in composing and working with Disney. I have music at Disneyland theme parks
I know
for
that was awesome. I
production.
watched the video, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. Which was exciting to even get that opportunity, and makes things easier to work with them in the future. Uh, but for you, how was it to get into sort of the Star Wars franchise to have your music part of that? What was that journey like?
Well, okay, so that was interesting. It went through it's actually not officially part of Disney, right? So
Okay.
it's through an animator that had started a project a long time ago in a galaxy
Yeah.
far away. And so it was a 3-year project. And
Okay.
one of my friends actually was already working on it. And he just mentioned it to me because we were talking about Star Wars stuff. And he was like, "Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I forgot to tell you I'm working on this cool Star Wars project." And he was like, "Yeah, we need some more help on the audio and
Oh wow.
like the music." And he's like, "Do you want to be score producer?" So I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, like you don't even have to ask, just put me down. and so
Yeah.
and so it did help to already have a relationship with somebody, obviously. So in this case, it's somebody that I did know that invited
Yeah.
me onto the project, and I was eternally grateful because they knew how much of a Star Wars geek that I am and a
Mhm.
lifetime fan. And so once the excitement was over, we got to work, and we really had a huge task ahead of us
Yeah.
to blend the soundtrack with original works from the movies, which was
Mm.
so nerve wracking. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how that project kind of came about.
Nice.
So,
Did for the game side of it, did you have to do any programming, whatever
mm-mm.
softwares you'd Wise or okay, good. It's just making the music, sending it out, and they'll do all the integration.
Right. And for the Portal stuff, that was all live action. So
Yep.
that was helpful as well. And but I did have to do research a little bit. I had to go back into Portal and Dishonored and kind of like reintroduce the story to myself, even though I kind of knew it already. I just wanted to get a
Mhm.
fresh, take on it. And so
Cool.
same thing with Star Wars. I already
Yeah.
knew, episode 3 inside and out, but I needed to dive back into it even more detailed
Mhm.
than I usually do, which is pretty detailed anyway. And so it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun to kind of get back into it from more of an analytical standpoint. And okay, well, now I have to actually make something that sounds like it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's always interesting, even with when I have to approach like the trailerizations and stuff. It's like, okay, you want to keep the essence of uh the song, but also you want to put your spin on it somehow. And how do you do that? Or if it's like a remix or some type of um something that's going to be part of a bigger franchise, like how do you keep some of the elements the same, but also bring your own spin to it? So, but to
Yeah.
have something like that under your, you can list Star Wars. Everyone knows Star Wars, or a lot of people know Star Wars. A few people don't know Star Wars.
Yeah, they
So
actually, yeah, a few people don't, but
yeah,
obviously I want to work on more Star Wars
yeah,
stuff, of course. And there were multiple teams. There was a whole post-production team. There's an animation done by actually one person on the animation, but there was a whole post-production team that I was brought into that. And then obviously from that, the composition side was born.
yeah,
And there was another amazing composer because I was score producer, right? I had to kind of oversee to make sure
yeah,
everything was consistent. We worked together with the other composer. And so I actually did do a lot of writing sessions with them. And
yeah,
so it's like between the writing and then the reviewing and kind of, like helping with orchestration and making sure everything was in that style, it was
mhm,
quite a daunting task that we didn't take lightly, especially as lifelong
yeah,
fans. It was kind of like we took the approach of that we are working on the next episode, right,
yeah,
of the Clone Wars.
yeah.
So that's how we approached it.
Yeah, and you never know where those things could lead because it could lead to, the next film project or the next, animation. And everything is word of mouth. So if you mess up one time, like word spreads really quickly, especially in the composing and sync licensing
Right.
space. You mentioned briefly about collaborating and dealing with orchestration. Do you take the thing that's created like in a DAW and then you also transcribe that to sheet music for an orchestra to play, or do you work with an orchestrator on that?
Yes, no. Okay, so I know how to do orchestration, but I don't
Okay.
like to do it, right? And
Okay.
so I would prefer to give someone else the work, an
Okay.
orchestrator that
Yeah.
yeah, I'd rather have them do it and continue to work on the writing aspect of it.
Yeah.
Um, Even though I could do it, you know,
Hmm.
I'd rather be freed up to continue writing because, and
Yeah.
a lot of times, you don't have time to do orchestration in addition to writing anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also depends on the size of the project. Sometimes you have to do it because the project isn't big enough, like the budget's not there for you to hire somebody,
Mhm.
and you've already gotten your budget set for the music. And so you're like, okay, I guess I'll just have to do it this time, and you know that in the beginning. It's not like you get surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you actually share more of the process for you when it is when you work with producers and directors, some of those conversations that are had up front for more of the longer form, the video games and the films. Um,
Yeah.
are you
For
doing like
films.
spotting sessions?
Oh,
Are they
yeah.
just sending you? Yeah, you want to explain what
And
what that
so,
is with the process? Yeah.
yeah. So I worked on a film like this year already. I've got one film in
Wow.
for the year. Um, one
Nice.
year I did like 3 or 4 films. And so that was like
Wow.
really, really crazy. But for just, I'll just take this last one, for example.
Mhm.
And so, they reached out to me because they already knew about me because right at this point, I guess word of mouth kind of helps out a lot. Social media, I've been doing a lot
Mhm.
of social media
Yeah.
presence and trying to get out there. And I met one of the guys a while back. And so they reached out and were like, hey, we have this film. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, send me the synopsis. You can send me the
Mhm.
script if you want. They already had a rough cut, so I didn't really have to get into the script too much. So they just sent me the rough cut. And so I said, the first thing we need to do is find out how much music you need, right?
Yeah.
And so that immediately led to a spotting session over Zoom.
Okay.
And so as we were kind of talking about Voicemeeter Banana earlier, I
Yeah.
actually, it'll plug into Pro Tools and then you can stream your DAW session through Zoom.
Mhm.
And so I did that, and we were doing a spotting session, obviously through a screen share, and I was pumping audio through that as well. And so then they had gotten to the music, and after we kind of outlined where music would be, we were talking about what style of music there would be, and they asked me, "Do you have any suggestions?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And I asked them, "Do they have reference tracks?" Because I always like to go off of a reference track to make sure that we hit the
Mhm.
vision exactly like what the director is thinking, so there's no
Yeah.
guessing game. It's kind of like with a brief, right? This is where it's
Mhm.
similar to a brief.
Yeah.
You get a written description and then you get a reference track. And then that way I can make some samples real quick and throw it over there to them and say, hey, is this on the right track? And they say yes or no. But in this case, it was a style of music that I write very frequently.
Nice.
So I was
Yeah.
able to actually do an on the fly play music and mix it real fast while we were doing a spotting section in session in spots where we thought music would be of that style.
Yeah.
So it was actually a really unique experience. Most of the time, it's just a quick spotting session. And then, oh yeah, we used the burned in time code on the movie.
Okay.
And so that's all. I always request that, because if you don't have the burned in time code, it'll be really hard to make a reference, because I don't start things at 0 in the DAW, and so on and so on. And so
Mhm.
normally you just make time code references, you make notes and stuff like that. But which in this case we did the same thing as well. I wrote down timestamps and stuff like that. So the
Yeah.
spotting session is really important. Then we knew exactly how many pieces were going to go where. And then I got to writing on it. And then as I was writing a track, I would send them a track as I finished it. Right. And so
And
I
then,
wouldn't
yeah.
just send them the track alone. I would send the music mixed to the scene. Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. And so just kind of kept through that process through the whole film, really, after the initial steps.
Yeah, and I think what I learned really quickly getting into composing is I always thought that the music that was composed for the scene uh, would be used in the scene. But the last film I did, like the director, like I would give him a piece of music and I composed it to a specific scene they sent, but then they use that music throughout, other scenes of the film. They cut it up, they chopped it up.
Right.
Um, so when I would listen to soundtrack albums for films, I'd be like, I don't remember hearing this piece of music in the film, but then it's because the music that was composed was chopped up by the if there's an editor on the film,
Right.
and they use it, they edited it. But that's great. And actually, what I started doing as a bonus, I don't know if you did this or if you're going to do this for the film you just worked on, but the last film I worked on was the first one where I did this. I asked the director if I could release the music I created for it as a soundtrack, and I asked him to give
Mm-hmm.
me the order of the songs as they show up in the film. That
Yep.
way, I could put it in that order on the album. Because the way I compose it, again, like I said, they move things around, and then I was able
Right.
to release it on streaming platforms as a soundtrack and to this film. That's that film that I did. It's called Hemisphere. It's now streaming on Amazon Prime Video,
Yeah,
Tubi, and Google Play.
that's cool,
Um,
man. Woo. All right.
yeah, so
Yeah, I do
so
the same thing. I make sure I
yeah,
can, release on streaming, and I like to
yeah,
release it in the order in which they appear in the film.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a great way because it's not just like, I mean, it's great to have the music in a film, but then you also have another life for the music. It's like, oh, okay, now it's streaming. Now I can use it as, hey, I did the soundtrack for this film. It's streaming. You want to check it out.
Yep.
Here, like how I work with film. Um, can you contrast? Because what I haven't done, actually, I have to some extent. I worked on a online game. This is probably 10 years ago. I did music for an online game for National Geographic, actually. But it was
Nice.
like screen music, MIDI music, uh, nothing where people were like in a playing game and like music changes as they moved about. So the music you've done for like the video games, um, because with the film you outlined, how linear it is. The music goes here. Every time they go to the spot, they're going to hear that same music and it'll play in that order. With video games, we know people can go around in an environment. They might sit in one place for 3 hours. So, how do you approach composing music? How is there a spotting session for video games if someone's sitting there in the same spot in the game for 2 hours, or if they go to another area? How does that work?
Yeah, well, it's obviously it's similar in some ways, but then different in a lot of different ways. Because with that aspect of it, yeah, you're writing for a particular section that you're where visuals are going to happen,
Yeah,
but also at the same time you have to plan for different outcomes of the game,
yeah,
right? And so you have to make sure you have like I don't know, like multiple ways that the track can go: happy, sad, triumphant, you lost, your guy lost, and you have to start
mhm,
over, all those different types of versions. So it's basically different versions of the same track, and
yeah,
you have to do that throughout the entire scene or game that you're scoring for. Bigger games like Jedi Survivor, that's more
hmm
of they still have to do the same thing, but that's a whole different ball game.
yeah,
I'd like to get into more about how they did it for that game, because it seems like they were doing some of that, but then they were doing a lot of other broader type of ideas throughout the entire soundtrack, but then were related to the tracks before. And so it was really interesting the way they wrote the track, because it was a seamless transition between, like when you would jump off of a uh like let's see, so you're just jumping off of something into the next scene, and then the
hmm
music would seamlessly change.
Yeah.
but it wouldn't fade in and out, right? And so I liked the way that they were able to write the music in a way that made sense in terms of music and the scene that they were writing for.
Hmm.
And so that's another thing you have to watch out for in games, is that you really have to think ahead and plan it out, and because you can't just loop it.
Yeah.
But some
Yeah.
of it is looped, like title menus and stuff like that. You got to write tracks in loop format. So I learned
And,
about that as well. And
and you
so
mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
I would say that's one thing I learned early on, is that like certain things you do right in a loop format, right to the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With games, you mentioned with videos, you were composing with time code. Is there a such thing as time code in games, or does that not exist because it's such a free like world environment?
Well, the games that I was working on, we didn't really work off of time codes.
Time code, okay.
It was more of like scoring to picture kind of a vibe.
Hmm.
And then I just handed stuff over, and they took it from
Like
there.
a
And I
video.
wasn't really involved in the technical side,
Yeah.
but I did get to see artwork and game flow ahead of time. So I kind of was, it was like writing the picture for me for
Mhm.
that. Yeah, but I'm sure other games is totally different. But I'd have to see how you know probably like a AAA game, which I haven't worked on AAA, of course, but I'd like to see how they do it. That'd be very interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah, same. And I think where you in the Georgia area, there probably is a I know there's a big film presence, obviously, and TV show, but there might even be some video game things down there where you can be like a fly on the wall and watching how that process is done. Uh,
That's part of the plan, man. That's part of the plan.
yeah, you're in the place to be. And of course, I'll be down there more often as our daughter is planning to go to, well, she's going to college down there in 2 months. Um,
I know.
so
Congrats, man. Congrats.
yeah, yeah. So I'll be visiting you more often over the next 3 4 years. How do you let's get to sort of the technical side of things. What is your process when you're creating music? What is your DAW? Um, and if anyone here watching live on the Zoom, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll get to those also. But yeah, what is your
Oh yeah.
process, your DAW? How do you go about creating music when you're working on projects?
Ooh, like when I'm doing like for sync or
Either one, sync. We can go down if you want, like sort of your go-to for
yeah.
composing, go-to string libraries, or percussion.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah, we can do that. We can talk a little technical.
yeah, yeah. Let's
So
start here. What is your DAW?
yeah, okay. So let's start with that. So I use Pro Tools for everything.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, for MIDI, mixing, mastering, everything. Right.
Um,
Everybody's
I,
like, you use Pro Tools for MIDI? What?
yeah, I know Pro Tools. I used to use Pro Tools. I'm certified Pro Tools. I used it for about 12 years.
Yeah.
And people always seem to be surprised that you could compose in Pro Tools. It's like it's a DAW. Like it's mostly used for like mixing, mastering.
Right, right, right,
But
right.
you can make music in Pro Tools just like any other DAW.
Right. Because I saw an article of not an article, but a video of like Brian Tyler, right? It
Mhm,
was like an outpost video or something like that. And he said that he uses Pro Tools as like a tape recorder,
mhm.
basically. Like he composes in a different DAW, and his assistants compose different DAWs, but they end up in mixing and doing
In Pro
mastering
Tools.
in Pro Tools and stuff like that, and tracking in Pro Tools,
Yeah,
which I thought
yeah.
was interesting.
Yeah, it seems like at some point, no matter what you use, especially on the composing side, everything gets put into Pro Tools. A lot of the big uh, video studios that are mixing, to film, they're using the Pro Tools sort of framework. So you're already in there with the music, so even better.
Yeah, it
Uh,
seems like that. Because when I started with Pro Tools, I was like, can this thing do MIDI? When I was first learning Pro Tools. So when I
it
found
can.
out it did MIDI, I'm like, all right, man, I'm doubling down. I'm going to learn it.
Yeah, the struggle for me was that Pro Tools for a while the Air instruments were only exclusive to Pro Tools.
Yeah,
So when I had to stop using Pro Tools, and I started using Logic and other, well, actually Logic, I couldn't bring like some of the Air plugins over. And I really liked like Hybrid and Loom and Vacuum, and I used the
yeah,
Boom. I
vacuum.
used that for I used Boom for a bunch when it first came out.
Oh yeah,
Expand. Still underrated, even though a lot of those plugins haven't been updated in over 10 years. But those
right,
sounds are still like they're great. You blend them well. I just got back into hybrid because it just got fully compatible with M1 Max. Um, so I
right,
haven't
right.
been able to use it for like 2 years, and now I just got it like a month ago. It's like, okay, this is what I've been wanting. I've been missing my hybrid sounds.
That's so
Um,
awesome. Yeah,
so
I just used Expand, something from Expand on a track like recently.
yeah, expand is like I don't think they've done any updates or expansions. They haven't even changed the UI, but
No,
if it's not broke, don't fix it. So
no,
yeah.
it's great. And so, but yeah, Pro Tools, I'm on a Windows computer, 64-bit. It's a pretty beefy computer. I don't know if everybody wants to know about that, but it's a real beefy Windows computer with it's not even the latest version of Pro Tools. I actually need to upgrade, but I don't like to upgrade in the middle of projects. So
Yeah. Yeah, which is another good point because sometimes because I do a lot of, not a lot of, I do some like beta testing and demos. Sometimes I have to upgrade to the latest versions of things, or I have like a beta version of things. And if that messes up your system, if you don't have like another system to do your testing on, you're like out of
right.
luck, especially if it's in the middle of the project. So that's the struggle I deal with as being like a person that does demos and beta testing, but then also, doing work in the music side of things. It's like, hey, if this demo doesn't work or this version of this plugin like isn't compatible with my system and it just crashes everything, I'll be out of luck until I can figure out how to remove it, and then hopefully they fix the bugs. So there's always that sort of risk, especially with upgrades. I know people that wait.
Yep.
Uh, I usually wait. At least at a point one version. Sometimes I wait 6 months. I know people that wait, they're always the version behind. Some people are two versions behind. So whatever reasoning you have, but a lot of times the plugins that you use are not compatible with the update as soon as it comes out. Even with the native like Logic stuff, sometimes they have bugs and things. So a lot of people say wait for that point one update. But
Yeah, I just went through
yeah,
that with actual contact.
yeah.
I have the full version, which stopped at 6.8, right?
Mhm.
And so they released 7, and 6.8 still hasn't updated. And so that's one of the things I'm doing research on. So now I'm using the Player 7 for certain instruments that have
Okay.
already updated to the new version.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I opened up an old session just to kind of reference like what I was using for instrumentation, and it
Mhm.
wouldn't load one of the guitars,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so unless I had to redo it with 7, Player 7 instead of like 6.8, because it said, oh no, it's not the newest version. You have to use this one to open it and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And so
And
I was like, oh man, okay, I see.
and Paul, I see your question. Well, I'll ask that shortly. But you bring up a good point about if you have those instruments, like there's some instruments that I use that if I'm in the flow of creating, it's like, okay, I want to bring a guitar into this. Um, Let me open up, one of my go-to guitar plugins. What do you do when that doesn't work? And for me, it's like, okay, I need to have in my mind at least one or two backup options. Okay, this guitar doesn't work. Let me go to this other backup option. In
Exactly.
in case contact's not working, do I have one that has their own UI so that I can at least get the idea out, or maybe I just have to use a Logic stock sound for now, and then I can, restart my computer at some point and then get the actual instruments I want. But sometimes you want to keep the flow going, unless for some reason your DAW just crashes and you got to restart or reboot. But
Right,
um,
exactly. Which knock on wood, that happens, infrequently. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you definitely want to keep your systems optimized. I literally last week I was getting low on space on my hard drive, but I haven't backed up a lot of my sessions. So I took a day and I was like, let me just go through. I back up to an external hard drive. I also back up to
Yep.
Google Drive, and then I
Okay, cool.
delete it from my hard drive. I actually need one more. I have two backup options, but I need one more just to feel
I,
mentally safe. But two is good. Three is better.
yep. I actually had to take my system drive from a 1 terabyte to a 2 recently,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this year. So
yeah,
because just things were filling up. And then I took the I'm actually going to take another, I'm going to separate all the session files onto another SSD
yeah.
and just have the instruments, because right now the instruments, unfortunately, and the session files are blended together, but I'm going to separate onto another SSD. So
Yeah, that's what I have a
um,
SSD, but I have a 4 terabyte, the Samsung, shout out to Samsung T7, which are great. I know people have been trying to suggest, they're not expensive, the T7, or I mean, relatively for what you get, but
right,
also they're reliable. But I know you can also build your own like NVMe drives. People have been trying to get me to do that, and you could save a couple hundred if you build your own, and you can have, like up to, I don't know,
that's
six
true.
terabytes or whatever. So I
Right.
might look into I might look into that, but again, that's blending like as tech guys, it's like, oh yeah, I think I can do that. I can get the parts from Amazon and build my own drive. But also sometimes I just want to buy a drive and keep working and keep the flow going.
Oh
Um,
yeah, because I mean, even though I'm a tech, person, I actually ended up in cybersecurity, went through
yeah,
systems engineering and all the whole track, right?
yeah,
And then I know how to do it, but sometimes I kind of like default to the, man, I really got to get this finished. I don't have time to get into the weeds of the tech. I just need something that works right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I can
Um,
come back to it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Or if Samsung just wants to become sponsors of Luke and I, then we will be forever grateful. Just send us drives, once a year, and that'll keep us going for our next year of projects.
That's right, man. Yeah, some
To
970s and
yeah, yeah. So some terabytes, a couple terabytes of drives here and there, doesn't hurt. Let's get to Paul's question. Paul says, "I'm a
yeah.
sync composer. I would be grateful to hear both of your suggestions for writing faster and increasing my quantity. Thanks for the opportunity. So, what are your suggestions, Luke, for writing faster and increasing the quantity?"
Oh man. Okay, so I went through this when I got my first two EPs back in 2020.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a mild panic attack. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with that. Let me figure out how to write faster. Because I'd never written like an album took me like, I don't know, a year before
Mhm.
that. And so anyway, so I had to really slow down and look at my DAW from a really analytical standpoint and go, okay, what am I actually doing to get to my endpoint? And so I kind of mapped it out on paper, like literally, I went old school for a minute and started writing down my workflow. And then I slowly went through and evaluated my template for anything that I could change that would make what I want to achieve faster. And
Yeah.
so I had to basically come up with a strategy and a workflow that allowed me to push through tracks and then get them finished. And then I realized, because I guess learning the process for like how to write with sync in mind really helped. So once I learned what that structure looked like and sounded like, I was able to obviously push my workflow even faster. And then
Yeah.
another thing that really helped was to have templates ready to go.
Hmm.
So I wasn't spending, an hour or so doing a template, every time I sat down, because time, as you know, like with you, when you sit down, you need to be able to like knock it out,
Yeah.
like within like a couple hours. And then I can come back later, maybe another couple hours, and then get it done.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of quick tips, and there's a lot more, but I want to hear Marcus jump in
Yeah.
your ideas as well, because
Uh,
I
yeah.
know your
Uh,
output.
Very, very similar. And Paul, if I don't know if you're on LinkedIn, but I actually recently made a post, maybe a week or two ago, for a library that I did a project for. And it was album I did for them that they released, and it was 10 tracks, and I did that album instrumentals. And usually instrumentals I do are like 90 seconds, 2 minutes, but I did that album in a day. And I think it was maybe underscore tension, so nothing too crazy. I made the post about it, like, hey, I did this in a day, and then someone responded like, what is the purpose? And I went in and explained that for me, creating quality music fast, it's taking me time to get to that part of making music fast, but it's also, you know, cranking them out. So getting them to the industry, getting them to the libraries, getting more music out as fast as I can. That's still quality and quantity, even though you should really focus on the quality first before getting to quantity. But now I'm getting to the point where it's both. And the library that I did it for, they're really particular. So once I knew like what they wanted, I just know how to feed the beast, so to speak. And they're getting me most of my placements in sync. So that was validation working with them, and to the point where when I first started working with them back in I think early last year. uh the owner was just like, you make music fast. And I was like, yeah, I don't know any other way, because I used to play in church. So playing piano and Hammond organ in church, sometimes we would be at rehearsal Saturday, and the director would say, oh, we want to do this song tomorrow, like the next day, and we'd have to learn basically a song overnight. These aren't just do re mi type songs. These are songs by like Richard Smallwood that have like classical things, or James Hall, which is like jazz mixed with classical, or Kirk Franklin or Ty Tribbett. They have different changes. And every Sunday we're doing, 10 to 15 songs. And every once in a while they throw us under the bus, like, hey, we want to play this song tomorrow, or we want you to
Yeah.
learn this song by tomorrow overnight. So having that background, and then learning, I'm in Virginia, so having studied like Timbaland and Pharrell, those guys make music fast, or Bank or Knots. They get in the studio, they have ideas, things are just flowing, they're in the workflow. And just growing up watching, YouTube clips or whatever clips were in movies and things that I could find of them creating music. And it's like these guys are like cranking the music out. So, oh yeah, Paul says that okay, yeah. So
Okay, cool, man.
and then I would say, as far as the creative side itself, is templates, as Luke mentioned. For me, if I'm working on a project, so here's like a typical workflow. And let me start with templates. There are two types of templates, at least that I use. There are session templates. So let's say I have templates for making hip hop music. I have templates for making trailer music. I have templates for making pop music. So if it's like, okay, I need to make something really quick in this genre, let me open up that template and just my stuff is the routings there going to the reverbs and the plugins maybe I want to use, or at least the tracks for the plugins that I would load up. So I have session templates, but I also have track templates, which is what I use mostly because I typically start with a blank session these days, especially if I'm starting to work on a project. So to give you an overview of like an album, let's say I get an album, like I got to do a neoclassical album for a library. So what I would do for this next neoclassical album is I would start with the blank session and I would go into the session in Logic and I have my track template. So I can click on my strings long track template and it'll load up that track with the subtracks of all the strings, that I like using Contact and Spitfire Audio or whatever. I use Aria Lite. We'll talk about plugins shortly. So I will load up the track templates for the strings. For neoclassical, I don't really need brass. So it would probably be strings long, strings short, and percussion, and maybe sound effects and things like that. But then I started with the blank session, but for this album, when I finish that track, that first song, I'm going to duplicate that session and that becomes the template for that album, if that makes sense. So for an
Mm-hmm.
album project, and that's how I do those like 10 albums in a day or 10 songs in a day. I haven't done 10 albums in a day, but 10 songs in a day for an album is I start the first song, blank session, build it out, compose in that thing. When I'm done with that, on to song number two, duplicate the session, open it up, delete all the MIDI, all the audio, and then rebuild song number two with the same sound palette as was a part one. Sometimes I might take out,
Mm-hmm.
or I might use a different violin, or I might not need, the sound that I used in the first song, but you have the same sound palette. And then for the third song, take the second song, duplicate that session, do it all again until you have all 10 done. So I think
Yep.
really that's two things, the templates, session templates, track templates. And then the third and final thing is shortcuts. Like
Yeah.
whether you are doing keyboard shortcuts, whether you have, I know Logic Pro has an app both on the iPhone and iPad that you can use and you can load up your own shortcuts. They also have built-in shortcuts. It's called Logic Remote. You can use a Stream Deck. I know people that use Stream Decks. I have one here that have like all kinds of workflows, one touch, and it almost creates the track for you. And at some point, I guess AI will come into play with all of this stuff. But between
Yep.
session
Yep.
templates, track templates, and shortcuts, because if you're going to do something two or three times within a session, learn the shortcut for it. If it's like, hey, how do I hit play without bringing the mouse and going up and clicking the play button? That's spacebar. Okay, you know that. Commit that to memory. And most EW spacebar is play and spacebar is stop. So and then learning those shortcuts and committing them to memories, especially the ones that you're going to use often. It's like, okay, I keep going here and clicking this mouse button. What is the shortcut really quick? Let me just try to, do that a couple times. And then next thing you know, it becomes second nature. So session templates, track templates, shortcuts, that'll help you get to writing faster and increasing that quantity. But you also want to make sure the quality is there first. So yeah,
Yes,
that's,
exactly. I got another tip too.
yeah, what do you
Um, so here's another a couple other tips. No particular order. Knowing what's in demand for whatever you're writing for is like huge. So I always have like some type of reference to go off of. So you don't copy the track like exactly the way they do it, but you get the sound kind of, you have like a basic understanding of the instrumentation that you're trying to achieve. And also with that in mind, you want to make sure you really know how to write for a particular genre, like almost blindfolded. Like, all the instruments, basically some technical aspects of the track. Like for an example, like a neoclassical track, there's always going to be some shorts somewhere in there underneath
yeah.
melodic lines. There's going to be some basic counterpoint in the cello. There's going to be some strings. The ostinatos might even hold the melody for a little bit, and then the upper strings might come in, or the woodwinds might come in, or you might trade off like some call and response type stuff. So you're going to know some technical aspects for the different styles you're writing. And because you don't always, I mean, the other thing I do is I have a story. So when I was working on my neoclassical, I was using a TV show as an example, Five Star Chef, right? Because I was writing for a competition cooking show.
Mhm.
And so I was like, man, I'm gonna just pretend I'm writing for an episode. right? So I picked my favorite episode. I studied it inside and out so I'd know like what type of tracks come at the beginning, middle, and end, and all the way through. So then I turned the volume off and I started writing to the different scenes, kind of like, and I would turn it off and then watch it and then write some more. And so I was like pretending I was writing for the actual show,
Yeah.
right? And so that's kind of like having a story in mind and very specific um, goal in mind for, that really helps out a lot. And so those are a couple more tricks and tips and techniques. And those really help me out a lot because I find out that even when I don't have like a really concrete idea, but I know the technical aspects of a track, right? Then you can start off with some shorts and do some
Mhm.
ostinatos and kind of get into the groove. And then usually when that happens, by the time I've got the underlying supporting instrumentation done that's from a technical aspect, then everything starts to kick in. And sometimes the creativity like starts to go in like a direction I didn't even think about. And it's like almost like the light bulb goes off sometimes. And then other times it's like I'm pre-writing the track before I even sit down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I already know by the time I sit down exactly how I'm going to start it. I know what's going to happen, a general kind of an idea. And then I just start mapping it out with markers immediately.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
really helps workflow as well, because I know every 4 bars, I'm going to change something and I know the break's happening here. Right. So it's real easy to go, okay, I got 8 bars. It's changing at 4 after the fourth one. So you can kind of really get quicker that way as well. And even for the crime show
Yeah.
music, I mean, that's very specific style.
Hmm. Paul is like, you didn't. I don't think you expected a 20-minute masterclass. One more thing is, I would say, like, if depending on what project you're working on, if you have references, that pretty much is your roadmap. So,
Yeah,
as far as sounds and tempos and things like that, that's the guideline for what they're expecting, something similar to, obviously, without infringing on the
e-
copyright. So,
even in the same key, you can use the same key.
yeah,
You can use the
yeah,
same time signature. Just don't use the same melodies. Don't use the
yeah,
same exact patterns. Make something original. That's a big key. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
because I did that one time, but by accident with an Indiana Jones style.
okay.
They were like, it's a little too on the nose. Just change the melody around and some of the other instrumentation, and you're good. Because
Hmm.
I was trying to do it so fast, I lost sight of because I've heard the Indiana Jones stuff so many times that I
Hmm.
started writing
Yeah,
without even thinking about it, without any references in front of me. I just started writing.
yeah.
And so it ended up being too close. And so that was one time where I just had to go back and adjust, and then I sent it in. It was fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the thing, especially when you start working on those franchises. It's like, can you, you want to keep some of, like I mentioned earlier, you want to keep some of the essence of the original, but you want to build in your own. But are you even allowed to use elements of the original? If you can, if you're working on like a project for, a Harry Potter, can you use the theme? Depending on the project, they might not have the rights to use, so you might have to figure
That's
out.
right. You got to be really
Um,
careful. Ask ahead of time too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which this will be a good segue. So, speaking of like simplistic things, what we'll get to is sort of the plugins you use. I was working on a project for a library. I did an album for them. I think this was last year with a singer. So it's like epic cinematic vocal. And at the time, I was mostly using Albion One for strings. Like with
Okay.
Albion One, it is it's like an ensemble library. It doesn't have like the breakout strings. So
Right.
I sent the project in, and the library liked it, but then they ended up sending it into a project, and the project was like, we want to use, we're considering using um like 3 of these songs from this project as a opening for a show. Hopefully that lands. So they reached out to the library like, hey, can we change the string library that's being used? Um,
Oh,
and they were
okay.
like, can you make it sound more uh uh I don't know if I don't think they use the word realistic, but can you make it sound like more like strings? And
Yeah.
and so I was like, yeah. And what that meant to me, I had to figure out what that meant. But what that meant to me was actually going in and taking out, most of my string parts are 4 parts. So it's like basically going in, taking out the top line is going to be, violin one, violin two, violoncello. So breaking the chords I was playing in the Albion one patch and breaking it out to violin one, two, violoncello. And for that I used the Cremona Quartet
Yep. Yep. Yep.
contact
Voicing. You got to
contact
do the voicing.
the
proper
voicing.
voicing. Yeah.
So I was doing the lazy thing up front, which is doing the patch, the ensemble patch. But then once I did this, I just went into each song, and it was a little easier. Again, knowing the shortcuts with Logic Pro, you can go into the MIDI. I can hit Shift Up, and it'll select all the top lines in the MIDI. So I can hit Shift Up, delete that, Shift Up, delete the second one, Shift Up, delete the third one, and all I'm left with is the bass line. And I just do that, to keep, or Shift Down to delete the bottom one.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I've
so
done that too. Like I'll
yeah,
copy it through and then just delete the one I don't need for that
yeah.
register.
Yep, just copy it through all four times and delete the line I don't want, and there you go. And
But at the
I,
same time, you
yeah,
can't always have them in octave splits. So
yeah, yeah. So and then some of the great string libraries also don't have, they have the sound of the strings are in the exact register of the instrument. So
yes,
some
like
things you play on the keyboard might be out of range. So you, like you said, you might have to drop it down to octave or play another
that's
uh
right. Spitfire
melody.
Solo is like that too. I just got that library and I used it on my neoclassical and learned that the instruments are in the range
That's good. I don't
on the
have it yet.
keyboard.
That's on my radar, and a lot of my friends at Spitfire Audio are no longer there, but I would love
Yeah,
to get
I use
it.
Albion One for like everything.
Me too. That and Abbey Road 2 for the neoclassical stuff. That thing is like straight neoclassical sound, like
Oh yeah,
Bridgerton.
totally.
Um, so let's get into it. Let's talk
And then
about
layering too. Yeah.
layering. Let's talk about like your favorite strings. Let's start with or favorite libraries. Let's start with since we're talking about like your strings long. So
Oh
what's your
yeah.
like go-to libraries for that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Cinematic studio strings.
I've heard a lot about, I don't have it yet, heard a lot about that.
Yeah, it's incredible. It has like it's not like a super expensive one. It's like $400. But
Mhm.
you get this incredible realistic sounding like orchestra.
Yeah.
And it's very affordable. It has so many articulations, so much control, CC controls,
Mhm.
anything you can want to do with it, you can do it. You can even throw it in concertino mode.
Yeah.
So they did the recordings for that as well. And then so not only the long's great, but you can do like really amazing shorts and other things,
Okay. Yeah.
harmonics and stuff like that.
And I know Luke mentioned, $400. Um, that can be a lot to some people. So of course, if
Yeah,
if you are, there's ways to build up. Even with me, it was building up. Wick Jones, the library was called CS. Well, it's not CSS. It's called Cinematic Studio Strings.
right.
But a lot of people refer to it as CSS. The For me, it was like building up, like I started with the free stuff, Spitfire Audio Labs,
Oh, me
BBCSO,
too. Yeah.
Discover, and then
I mean,
slowly building up. You get a project here and there, you get a sync
yep.
placement. It's like, okay, then you do your research, what's the library I should get? For me, I was really invested in Spitfire Audio platforms. So it was like Spitfire Audio, free stuff, Piano Book Labs, and then it was
Yep. Piano
um,
book, labs.
the original stuff that was like $29.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
then eventually Albion One, Albion stuff, and
Yeah.
hopefully I'm gonna get that what was the library you mentioned, the solo studio or solo strings.
Yeah, Spitfire solo strings. But
Yeah.
I started on the free stuff as well, and actually started when I first bought my rig in 2012. I started with the East West, the Symphony Gold pack.
Okay.
I got that, and then the one where you can't adjust all the mics, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to figure it out because the
Yep.
one, the platinum edition was like too expensive at the time, and so
Mhm.
like you said, I used a lot of free stuff, and I actually secret is I still use a lot of the free stuff
Yep. Yep. Layered.
because
Yep.
and I actually have a big document where I keep track of everything for my personal use, and so I know I can get back
Okay.
to them really easily. And so I did I don't know, I kind of look back on it recently, and I
Mhm.
have a record of like over 1,600 different free stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it
Same.
really builds up. And so Labs is a great one.
Yeah.
ADO has some stuff. Impact Soundworks has some
Mhm.
stuff. Heaviosity has some. Cinematic Tools has some. Like big players in the industry have
Yeah.
free, high quality instruments, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I don't know who was the first, but for me, Spitfire Audio I think was the first with Labs and BPCSO, and then I started seeing, Heaviosity Foundations, and then
Yep. Foundations. Yeah.
Layers and Sign Player from Orchestral Tools. So
Yep.
there's a lot of these players that if you want to sort of get familiar with their environment, their UI, their sounds, get the free stuff, and then it's like, okay, you can work your way up. It's almost like a freemium model. So I'm really enjoying what some of these plugins and libraries are doing in that
It.
space. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Let's talk about brass. What are your go-to brass sounds?
Ooh. Okay. So I do layering. So
Okay.
I still use Hollywood Brass by East West,
Mhm.
and I layer it with Albion 1.
Okay.
And that's pretty much my go-to for brass. Occasionally, I have Metroarch 5 too by Orchestral Tools. And
Yeah.
so it's not sponsored by anybody, just so everybody knows I'm not sponsored by anybody. And so I'll occasionally use the Metro Arc stuff for brass because it has a realistic kind of like grittiness to it, like the real instruments do. And so when you take something that's like super smooth and then you add another one, layer it that's not, that has more of the grittiness to it of the natural instrument, it blends really well. So you have to be careful though when you blend the different virtual instruments together because they don't
Yeah.
always work together very well. They don't sound right. So you have to like play around with an experiment.
Yeah, a lot of suggestions I see because some of these um, libraries are recording and recorded. They are recorded by real players, but they're recorded in different environments with different reverbs and different studios. So sometimes it's like, hey, you might have to take out the reverb and all the plugins if you're layering, and then put in your own, reverb
Right.
from your DAW. Or heard some great things about what is it, Liquid Sonic? There's reverb they have, but there's a bunch of reverbs out there that
Oh yeah.
just
I use Spaces too by East West.
basis East West,
I mean,
which
got
another
that on
good
sale too.
uh, two good points actually you just made. One is we're talking about these libraries. Some of them aren't cheap, but if you look at companies like East West or Museo, where you can pay a monthly subscription. I know there's East West Composer Cloud, which is, I don't know the
Yep.
price, maybe 30 a month, if that.
I think so.
Museo,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
similar range, where you can basically have access to all of their uh, sounds for a small monthly subscription. And that's really great for, I think even if you're in college, you might even get a discount to lower
You
the
can.
price.
Yeah. Even with
So
Spitfire, they do an educational discount.
educational discount.
And so
So
does the
yeah.
Cinematic Studio series people.
Yeah,
So
so I would say research all of that if you're a teacher or if you're a student in college or even an online program. If I think as long as you have an educational email, you can get a discount on some of these products. The other thing
yep.
is I usually wait for the next sale. So there might be some sales. Usually right now I'm seeing a lot of summer sales,
Yep.
4th of July, Independence Day sales over the next week. We'll see. A lot of these companies are based in the US or they center their sales around US holidays. And then I would say after that, definitely look for Black Friday deals. I've gotten most of my plugins on Black Fridays because those deals are usually the best deals a company offers as they're trying to end out the year, maybe meet some goals. And then there's some plugins companies that just never have a sale, but
Or startups. Don't forget about the startup like
yeah,
virtual instruments like Dark Force Audio,
yeah, yeah,
for example. Nobody
uh,
really knows about them, but they're
yeah,
amazing. It's like
yeah. Yeah, so there's a bunch. Let's get to, so we did strings, brass. Let's get to synths. Like, what are your
synths.
go-to?
Um, I don't really use a whole lot of synths, but when I do, it's
Yeah,
probably something that was in the complete series by Native Instruments.
yeah.
I think I
Um,
used the Analog Dreams that was bit in there.
okay.
That was
Um,
one that I used not too long ago. But yeah, not a lot of synths
yeah,
for
I
me.
actually forget about those. For me lately, like I said, it's been going back to the old sense of your the expand and hybrid. I know some people, I don't have Omnisphere. I have Massive, but I just don't use it. I don't have Serum. I know those are some like the go-to stuff that people use, like
Yeah, I don't
Serum.
use Massive because it's massively complicated.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do have like Keep Forest. I use a lot
Yeah.
of stuff through Keep Forest, of course, because we do trailers. And so we're
Mhm.
always using stuff, cinematic tools for trailers as well.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff is kind of like synth oriented, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, it is a lot of the stuff, like especially the keep. I mean, I've 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 done trailer tracks where it's just like I could just do this with Devastator, Breakout Pro, and nothing else, and
Yeah,
and
that's been
that's what it's
you could
for.
really do it just with that, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I
it's
do it with Warzone sometimes, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh man, I haven't used anything else. I need to throw something else in here.
yeah. I sometimes feel like that's like, wait, I don't have damage in here. Like, let me pull that out real quick. And that's just like the joy of like I said, some of these plugins are really expensive. Even going back to the free, um, Keep Forest is really generous with the free stuff they have because
Oh
it's like
wow, yeah,
I've used some of their free stuff, even though technically you're not supposed to, on stuff that I'm pitching to opportunities. And
right.
that stuff is just like you can literally make there's a video on YouTube, I forgot the guy's name, but he did about a year or 2 years ago trailer track using all free plugins, um
Yep.
and and free sounds you can download, bush hits and sound effects.
Oh
uh
yeah, totally. And
no
then even I think at one point, if you entered Michael Massa's competition, he was giving away like
Yeah,
a sound pack for trailer stuff.
Yeah, which is another good point because
So,
I used to do contests. In 2020, I entered over 200 contests. So a lot of the gear and software I have is from contests and entering contests because
yep,
whether you win or not, usually is not the point. It's like sometimes you get a pack or you get a sound or you get a plugin
right,
just for entering the contest. And then if you
right, right.
place, you win money or you win gear. That's even better. But just by entering, it's like, hey, and I entered a contest. It was hosted by Orchestral Tools, maybe 2 years ago, like in the middle of the pandemic. And they were supposed to give a prize to like the top three people, which they did. But they were like, all of the entrants, we were amazed at all the interest we got. So we're giving everyone, this free library or whatever it was. And all of
Cool.
us who entered, I don't think I didn't place in that one. So everyone who entered got a plugin at the end, but that was not part of the plan
Oh,
at all.
cool. That's
So you
nice.
just you never know. And that's sort of the breeding ground for me was like the contest was a breeding ground for like sync licensing and trailer music.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, the QTube, they're dedicated to film
yeah,
scoring, but the
yeah,
QTube does competitions as well, and they partner with people like big studios and stuff like that. And
yeah.
so years ago, I competed in the Sprite Fight,
Okay.
that was
Oh,
the
wow.
animation thing,
Yeah. How did
and
that go?
yeah, well, I didn't place, but one of my buddies placed third, and he got a bunch of free software, like basically an
Yeah.
entire collection of software that he still uses to this day. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, just like QTube. Um, I don't know if they've done anything lately, but it's been for our audio. Like I said, a lot of friends left. They used to do an annual competition. So they did a Westworld one year, they did a Bridgerton one where you would score a
yep,
scene.
yeah, I did those
Um,
too. Yeah,
yeah, there was one that everyone was had a huge backlash because I think he did like a funny was it the Westworld one? The winner, Dave Goodell. Uh,
yeah. Oh, I know that soundtrack. That soundtrack was amazing.
I liked it. It's like I think he did like 8-bit stuff, and people were like,
It
"No, this is supposed to be serious." It was like, "No, it's different." Um,
I
I'm
thought
sure.
he did a perfect job, and it was done
Yeah,
really well because you were supposed to do a scene change
yeah,
because the whole scene was changing, and he was going through this metamorphosis in his mind. So it
yeah.
was up for grabs what kind of style you did on it. Really, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. For me, I take it like I knew when I did the Bridgerton one, I knew I wasn't going to win that one because I did it very similar to what the Bridgerton soundtrack was, but I was trying to figure out my approach to sort of neoclassical stuff. So I used that as a way to like, hey, if I was working on this actual project with Chris Bowers and Shonda and
mhm.
the whole team at Netflix, how would I approach it? So I took it at that approach. But a lot of times for the contest, they're looking for something very different, unique, definitely different from what the original is. So keep that in mind. I did a whole course back in 2020 on contests because I entered 200 contests this year. So
That's funny. It's good
uh,
practice though.
yeah, yeah, definitely good practice. Let's end with this one. I know that there's a lot of including coming out soon, as in at the time of this recording in this live video, tomorrow. There are two incredible percussion libraries coming out. But what are your
Yeah,
go-to?
tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, tomorrow. What are your go-to? And maybe I'll do a shameless plug for them and see if they'll send us a copy of it. But
Yeah,
what are
right.
your
Because you know who I'm talking about, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll mention that. But what are your go-to percussion libraries?
Okay, so obviously Keep Forest is a huge one. Damage 2 is a big one.
Yeah.
I actually use Albion 1. I layer stuff from that as
Hmm.
well.
The Darwin. Wow.
Um, yeah, I use the Darwin, the Easter Island,
Yeah.
another one like that. And then I mean those are some of the big ones right there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some smaller ones and stuff like that, but those are the main. And then piano, I have a lot of pianos too. So
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I forgot about pianos. We get to pianos. For percussion, it's for me, it's damage. Yeah, damage two. I actually use damage two and damage one. Um,
okay.
which is I usually layer those together, which like is great. Obviously, Keep Forest has, yeah, insane. I use AVA Music Group a lot of their stuff, which we'll get to shortly. They're releasing something that is actually out now. Shameless plug.
That's right. It's
Um,
out now, right?
uh, um, and I use LA Modern Percussion, which doesn't get talked about a lot.
Oh,
It's
that's
I
good
think
too.
from
Yeah.
Audio Ollie, I believe is the name of the company.
Yeah.
Um, but here's the thing. So Audio Ollie has a sampler of their instruments called Taste, which you can get for under $50. Um, and I got LA Modern Percussion because I was like, I'm going to use all these sounds from the bigger library, and I'm still using the same sounds that's in Taste. So it's like, if you want to just get, some beefier percussion, just get the Taste from Audio Ollie for like under $50, and you don't have to spend $100 on LA. But LA Modern Percussion is
Okay.
great. And then, of course,
See what
I have
else.
some from like Splash Sound. I know they have a
Okay.
couple I use. There was one from a company that Oh, Tom, is it Tom Factory? Uh, it's like I think it's called Tom Factory. Um,
All right.
I use it. I
Cool.
use that stuff. They have another one called Box Factory where they like took a cardboard box and made it some samples out of.
That could be
Um,
cool. Oh, addictive drums too. I use that when I'm
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, I use that one a lot. And then UJam has some cool drums too.
I don't. So I would love to. Wait, is UJam the one they make the like brass and strings? Is that the company that makes those libraries?
I'm not sure about that. I grabbed their one for K-pop style, like that type of
I have
style
those. Okay.
percussion. Yeah,
So I
yeah.
know which ones you're talking about. They're like, I actually was working on some pop music earlier today. So there's one called Vice. There's one like called Candy, I think.
Yeah, right.
So
Those.
I have some of those. But I think
Idol.
you
Idol's the
jam
one I got.
Idol's
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
If I'm correct, you should look up
Oh, the
uh
DM307 by Heaviosity. That's another one.
yes. I don't oh, I've heard of it. I don't have that one.
That one
Um
is amazing. I don't have it either, but I already know what it can do, and that's on my
mhm.
list of stuff to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh
But then there's another new one coming out tomorrow that I'm gonna
so
get.
that's what we're gonna get to. So there's two that's out, which we can talk about it. It's not like embargo news. Um, there is one from it's actually out right now, so you can purchase if you want. It is from AVA Music Group, and that one is called Decadence, or I guess it's Decadence or Decadence, Decadence. I believe it's
Yeah.
more percussive toms, but very cinematic. If you're not familiar with AVA Music Group, I actually use some of their drum stuff also. They have like modern pop drums and tape drum sounds. So I use a lot of their stuff in pop music. And then they have like a Unity synth, which is great, like synth stuff. But they have a drum library, Decadence, that's out now today. You can go purchase that from the AVA Music Group site. And then there is another one, Tommy Profit in collaboration with Cinematic Tools.
Yep.
Uh,
That's the one.
that's coming out tomorrow at the time of this recording. So it should be out by the time a lot of you see this. And that
Ooh.
thing also looks insane. Like
Oh
we're
man.
going to be, I've already the last month, I've been doing a lot of percussion um, like only tracks. Actually, there's a library that I work with that just released, I think today or yesterday, they just released a 12 track percussive album. I have half of the album. Um, and I'm just like, I already had the sounds, I didn't need any more percussion sounds, but it's like Tommy Profit, AVA Music Group, Cinematic Tools. It's like, okay, I need these sounds. And it's like this is probably gonna hold us composers over for the next year
Oh yeah.
unless Damage 3 comes out.
Well, there's
But
also Hans Zimmer from Spitfire too. Don't forget about that one.
Hans Zimmer percussion. I don't have Hans Zimmer. They have another one from I think his name is Charlie Klaus, who did the music for Saw. I think it's called Hammers.
Yeah, something like
Yes,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So there's so many options, but I'm definitely excited for AVA to get my hands on the AVA Music Group, Decadence, and the Tommy Profit. I don't even
Exactly.
know I don't know the name of it. Is it Profit Percussion? Whatever the name of that one is.
I think that's what I saw. Yeah, Prophet
Yeah.
Percussion.
Um,
It's gonna be just sick, whatever it is. It's like,
Yeah, Tommy Profit Percussion, and then Decadent. So both of those alone, I'll probably do some reviews of both of those if I get my hands on them. Trying to work with those companies, be like, yo, send it to me.
yeah, I
Um,
know, right?
let me get a copy. But I did say let's end on that, but there is this other one where there's even more options than there are percussion, and that is pianos. I probably demoed hundreds of pianos. I have the most demos on Piano Book, probably 600
Yeah,
plus.
yeah.
So a lot of them are pianos. Uh, but what are your like go-to pianos?
All right, so I recently picked up Allure from Heaviosity,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
so that's now one of my go-tos. But before that, one of my main go-to was Ascend by Heaviosity,
Yep.
and I have a bunch of custom snapshots and presets that I've done. I've gone through and actually customized it and
Okay.
saved it as like my own. And so let's see, another one. There's the Foundations piano, which is really good as well. And
Maybe I'll see.
then
Yeah.
if you want to get into like performance from a classical standpoint, the Sono Couture Hammersmith Pro would be
Hmm.
great for that because of the response time. When you put it in the lowest latency mode and it's
Hmm.
the only track in the session, it keeps up with like really fast classical.
Wow. Okay.
Because that's where I come from is classically, trained for, performance. And so I tested it out on this like
Mm.
really wicked piece by Rachmaninoff. And it was
Yeah,
keeping
that's
up. And I
crazy.
was like, whoa, there's no lag here. I'm not, and it's
Wow,
the
that's
round robins are like super sick as well if you get in the classic side. But in just general for everyday use, I mean, I still go with Ascend and Allure as my go-tos.
Yeah, those are great ones. Actually, I'm one that I thought I was going to use. Um, I wasn't going to use as much that I do use. I use Alicia's keys. Um,
Hmm.
that
That's a
is
good one.
Native
Yeah.
Instruments. The Native
Noir is good.
Instruments Noir. I haven't used Noir and Piano Colors as much. Um, there is one from IK Multimedia. I got to get the name right. That is, it's great because you put the piano um in different atmospheres. It's called Piano Verse, and it's basically you take a piano and you can put it like underwater. You can put it like in a
That's right. That's
club
right.
or town hall. I really like that plugin. Um,
I
there's
forgot about
one.
that one.
Yeah, I think there's so many options. I like the Native Instruments ones, the Gentleman and the Una
Mhm.
Corda. They have like five or six of those. Um,
Yeah, and
I
Westwood
like
has a felt one too, I think.
Rust One's Felt.
Yeah.
There's another the Labs one I use a lot.
Yep.
Just
Oh yeah, the
the
Labs
first
one.
the
Yeah.
first one that ever came out in Labs. Yeah.
Yes, I
Uh,
still use that one every now and then. And sometimes I'll actually layer the pianos together and like bump one down in the
yeah.
mix, but have one as
Yeah.
a primary, but add it for just texture and stuff like that.
Same, I would use, so I've done like trailer tracks where I started with either labs or foundations, and then I blend in a more like aggressive piano with a bigger attack.
Oh yeah,
Um
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh,
uh
another one is in the complete session, there's the piano effects called the Giant.
yeah, I was gonna yeah. I
Yeah.
just like the UI on that. Like I wish there was a
Oh
real
yeah.
piano like that. I was like, does this piano exist where we can go play it somewhere like in New York or somewhere? Like
It's
I
probably
would
Elton John's piano, man. It's like
yeah, I would want to play that one
me
like
too. I want that one,
yeah.
man.
Yeah. There's a brand that I've always wanted a virtual version of it. It's called Fazioli, um,
Okay.
a very like expensive piano brand. And I've always heard recordings of this piano. I got to play it at NAMM for the first time
Ooh. Okay.
last year, and I was like,
Yeah.
this piano sounds amazing. And shortly after, or it might have been 2 years ago, there was a person on Piano Book who sampled a Fazioli and released, his Fazioli rendition piano for free. And I was like, this is what I wanted. And there's a company that sells one for like $300, where you can
Yeah.
purchase their plugin. But I was like, I'm not gonna, I have way too many pianos that I ever need, virtual
Me
pianos.
too.
Um, but
Me
I was like
too.
the Fazioli, and I did a demo of it for Piano Book, and yeah, I was like, yeah, this is what I wanted, like a Fazioli like virtual version, and it's free, so that helps. But yeah, now these days when I tell people like if they're asking me what, even for just plugins in general, I was like,
The
start with
free
free. Go
stuff.
to
Yeah.
Piano Book, Labs, orchestral tools for audio, Heaviosity. You can do a lot, even the stock stuff. If you tweak it a little bit.
Oh yeah.
There's a guy I can't remember his name. I used to watch videos of him. He is on YouTube, and he would do like orchestral mock-ups using Logic stock plugins. And of course, he would tweak it, and but it would sound really good. So it's possible. It takes time. Uh,
It is possible. Like even that the piano, the grand piano, it's called a
yeah.
mini grand in Pro Tools. It's actually
Oh
really
yeah.
good.
That is, I think that's Air Instruments.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also have a decent, which I technically shouldn't say, but or a B3 emulation because I'm a Hammond artist, so I do use the IK Multimedia Hammond organ when I need that sound, which is created by Hammond in collaboration with IK Multimedia. But before that, I was using Logic stock organ, which is pretty decent, and then Air has I think it's called B3 or whatever they call it, um,
How-
organ. So yeah.
How's that piano in Logic? How's that?
So what's crazy? There's the Piano Logic is great. They have a Bosendorfer emulation, and then a Yamaha emulation, and then I think
Nice.
another Steinway emulation. Um, and they
Very
also
cool.
just released as part of their update with the AI integration they had built in. They
Hmm.
just released some other pianos where you can adjust like the mic positions. I'm actually using those pianos, not the AI piano player, but the sound, because you can load up the sounds. So they have like a bass player, a piano player. So now you can load up these different piano sounds,
I
and
saw
tweak the
that.
mic
Yeah.
positions and everything. So I'm actually using that more now in my uh, productions and things. So
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I saw that a little while ago. So that was good.
yeah. All right, I know we're like cutting into your production time. I'll ask you. let's go with one more question for you. Like, where do you see, obviously we didn't really get into AI, that could be next conversation, but for you, where do you see like the future of composing, at least from your perspective, the music industry, sort of the evolution of it over the next few years, even the threats, like where do you see all of that
Yeah,
falling into
that's
place?
that's a great question. The quick answer is it's really hard to know where it's going to settle.
Yeah.
It seems like right now there's so much up in the air. There's the major labels are now suing,
Yeah.
UDO and Suno, and probably they'll sue some other people as well in the process. And so the copyright laws are not even here yet. There really are no laws about AI, so nobody really wants to touch it in terms of professional
Yeah.
aspects of it. And there's even, you know, one of the things I think is going to happen is that AI music or AI generated music is probably
Mhm.
going to be first in the royalty free category.
Yeah.
And then what I'm worried about is that it blowing up the YouTube content ID
Mhm.
because of the fact of the way they say that AI was trained. They're
Mhm.
speculating on how it was trained. Nobody's really come out to say how it was trained, but we all kind of are kind of on, I don't know, expecting the result to be that it was trained on really high quality music that's already out there that they didn't have permission to get trained on,
Yeah.
right? So because the AI stuff is so good
Mhm.
and so close to music that was already made, it's kind of like everybody's, questioning, how it was trained. And
Yeah.
so if that is true and it keeps putting out music that's so close to current artists or artists that are already been published, it will blow up the YouTube ID, content ID identification system because it's going to be almost identical, if not too similar. And so outside of that, I think that's probably going to be some of the first things that we see. Copyright laws trying to catch up. What I do like is that some of the high quality music publishing companies, libraries, they're already coming out and saying, we're not going to use that, so
Yeah.
don't submit it. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a great stance to go ahead and take. And I understand why, because it's really complicated for the reasons that we just mentioned.
Mhm.
And so, but I was really happy to see that. Beyond that, it's really hard to know where it's
Yeah.
going to settle down. Um, we all have our ideas on where we'd like it to
Mhm.
settle down, so it doesn't
Yeah.
take away from
Yeah.
our creative aspects in our work. And then a little bit more for it, I kind of leave with this is that one thing I can see happening is that from um, our position, a good bonus for us in terms of like how we market ourselves as composers and artists is that we can say that our music is made 100% by us, not through AI, right? I think that's going to be a big selling point going down the road. And more people are probably going to want to do, work with musicians that actually make the music and not just use an AI generator.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that'll happen, some of those things.
Yeah. And with sort of the AI, I have a friend in the AI space who actually was referenced in the lawsuit. Do you know Jesse from Sync My Music?
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah. I follow his
so
channel very, very close.
Yeah, so Jesse, obviously he's been talking about AI for the better part of the last year,
Right.
and he posted a video showing how very similar some of these AI generated songs can be to the artist, and his video was referenced in the lawsuit,
Oh,
um,
he did.
and
Okay.
and
I didn't know
yeah,
that. Okay.
and I think I don't know if it was his video. There was someone who questioned the numbers. It's like, hey, they're suing for this amount of money per track that could have been referenced, and it ended up adding up to I think hundreds of millions of dollars. And I was thinking about it even when you were talking. I was like, what if Suno or Udio or whoever, what if their investors are like, okay, we'll just pay the hundreds of millions of dollars because we know that
Right.
this thing could make billions of dollars within the next 10 years. I
Right.
don't, you have to be able to somehow get them to shut down or scale back or whatever the case is. But to your other point, the the reliance on human generated, which I think might be a premium, maybe rates can go up for human generated versus AI generated, uh, you know, um, music. But yeah, it's such a unknown. Um, and then
I,
for me, on the other side of things, I really hope that trailerizations of songs for trailer music doesn't go away because I've invested a lot of time into
right.
that.
And
over the
they're
last
good
two
too.
years.
Very good.
Thank you. Yeah. Like a trailer just came out and it was someone else won it, or landed it. And I was like, so I got really close to it. I was just like, I didn't get it.
Oh
But
man.
the song they did was like insane. I was like, yeah, I see why this is the one that made the cut. Um, and then for sync stuff, I see the trend for me has been songs with vocals. I do a lot of instrumental stuff, but songs with vocals, I really like working on those types of projects and working with libraries and
Yeah, me too,
um,
man. I've gotten more into vocals as well,
yeah,
with some
yeah.
tracks.
Yeah, you should. Well, actually, yeah, because you just did the one with man, that song. Talk about that. Like any upcoming projects. I know you just had the one with London Elixir, Sync Queen, and Jay Nolan, another a Sync
Oh
King in the
yeah.
space. And I don't know if you have any with Brianna, who's another incredible singer. These are all
Yeah.
people in Atlanta. I know more people in Atlanta than I do like musically than I do in my my home state. But yeah, if you any projects coming up that you can talk about. I know you mentioned the film or you talked about the film. I don't know if you can mention what the film is or
Right.
that.
No, not yet. I can't talk
Okay.
about more in details, but one with Brianna, the Unstoppable track, that got
Unstoppable.
nominated, you
That's
know.
right. Yeah, yeah. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, twice, which we
Tell
were
them
whew.
what the nomination is for, what categories, what awards. I know it's him, but you can
Okay,
talk about.
so one of them is an album that the track appears with some other really amazing tracks that Brianna vocalized and did. She sung on and did all the lyrics. She worked with some other
Oh,
composers, and so that track is on that album of the year nomination. And then so that's like with 9 other tracks, and then also our track is also nominated for what is it? Message song or social impact song of the year.
wow. Yeah.
And
And
so
that awards program ceremony. What is the awards? Hollywood Independent
Music
Music?
Awards. Yeah,
Okay.
Hollywood Independent Music Awards. It's on July 18th. And it goes along with the Hollywood Music and Media Awards, which is in
Yeah.
November typically, which I was nominated for that back in 22 for some of my
Nice.
stuff on Shark Week. So
Nice.
and so those two things, I said that track was really great. I really had so much fun working on that track. And of course the stuff with London and Jay
Yeah.
and then Gallo Loch Ness, he and I are working some stuff together and we're gonna
Ooh,
do some more
okay.
stuff together.
Okay.
And so we're kind of
Nice.
like we're doing like a blend of hip hop and orchestra stuff in a unique
Ooh,
way.
Ooh, I need
It's
to hear that. Yeah.
it's kind of more I don't know, it kind of has a lot of trailer elements in it, but it's not
Yeah.
totally trailer. It's kind of like this riding the line between hip hop and trailer.
Yeah, I think we'll have to talk offline because I'm working on a couple projects like that, and that's a big one of my references for that is an album that I know is one of the top albums in the sync space for that sound for a library. So we'll have to talk offline. I can't mention what it is here, but
Yeah,
we'll talk. Um,
yeah. But when I do those, I make sure I turn in an alt mix where the trailer drums are turned off.
mhm.
So they have options for the alt mixes, so they can do, and there's a lot of alt mixes that come out of those, stuff like that. So the more alt mixes and, like
Yeah,
stem mixes you have, the better your chances are to get placements. That's kind of like one of the things that's really important to do when you do your production. So, but yeah, those
yeah,
three tracks are probably the newest tracks that have vocals on them that I'm really excited about. And, I'm out there promoting them and the other artists are out there promoting it as well. And they're just amazing people to work
mhm.
with, outside of just music. They're just really cool people and we get along really well. And so I look forward to doing more stuff with them, of course.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about collaborating. Almost going back sort of to what Paul was mentioning earlier, like how do you work in quantity or fast? When you collaborate with people, the more people you work with, it's almost cuts it by that fraction of people. So I wouldn't suggest working with 20 people in a song because it's going to be hard to clear if you're in sync. But if you're
Right.
working with two people, that's like each of you can do one third of the work. So it's like, hey, I'll do the music, and then you have someone do the singing, and maybe someone do the rapping, and you can split it. But also, everyone's also marketing to their own platforms or
Yep.
talking about, hey, this song is out, or they can, if it's non-exclusive, they can pitch it to all the libraries they work with. So the when you collaborate with people, you now have, that times more energy being put into marketing that project, that song, into to creating that song, to the point where
Exactly.
you could win awards or you can get placements and things like that. So, uh, a lot of times when people are like, I don't have enough time, okay, find a collaborator and automatically that could cut your production time in half if you find someone that you can align with. It's like, okay, instead of taking 4 hours to make a track, now it only takes me two, and now I can do two ideas in that time instead of one, and you're doubling up the effort. So.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. I'm working on two other albums right now that are instrumental based that I'm doing that with. That's also orchestral hip hop, but it's all instrumental.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because I can do hip hop, but the person I'm collaborating with, he does it even better, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, you do the drums, send me, spec the track out, get the whole structure down, and I'll just overlay the entire orchestra on top of
On
it.
top. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's about.
And
And
so yeah,
yeah.
and that's super
Uh,
fast
and
that way.
knowing your strengths and weaknesses helps. Like it's like, hey, okay, if I can't do like I can't really do EDM music. I've tried it. Like it's a lot.
Ooh,
Like for me, it's like
yeah,
trailer music is like trailer music is hard, but I can figure that out. EDM music's hard, but I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna.
that's a whole
So
different beast. EDM's like
yes,
really specialized. I mean, there's
yep,
libraries, music production companies that specialize in that,
yeah,
and one of them's
yeah.
here in Atlanta.
When I lived in Atlanta, I worked with a big EDM producer on it's sort of like a trailer EDM project, which was for one of the big trailer libraries last year. And he went to Full Sail, so we connected at one of our Full Sail meetups, and
That's awesome.
he reached out to me. He's like, hey, I work with all these like acts over here, like Asia and Korea, and he does EDM and K-pop. But he was like, I want to do a sort of like an EDM or libraries asked for like an EDM slash hip hop trailer blend.
Ooh,
So
I
me
love
and my
K-pop
team.
too, man. So,
Yeah. I think it's called Stadium Size Pop Rap Music. I forgot the name of the album, but um,
ooh, that's a cool
the
album title. Stadium Size.
Stadium
Yeah.
Size. So I'm hoping for it. So we finished the project within like a month, 2 months, 10 tracks. It took a year for it to get, ingested into for the
Oh yeah.
company to
It
ingest in their
takes a long
platform.
time sometimes. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that takes time. And then for me doing the stems, as you mentioned earlier, I use Logic Pro, but I have a software that is basically like AI stems, so I can open up the session, the software will scan the session, and then I can tell it what stems to bounce out, like through the master bus processing, what type of mixes I want. So usually I can run that, offline. It takes like half an hour, depending on the side of the track. I can do other things while it's doing
Ah,
that. I don't have to sit
okay.
here.
I still do
So
them like myself.
manually. I'm imagining that there's software out there that might help with like Pro Tools. I
Yeah.
think there's some software where the stemming and things are a little better. I think it's better like in Ableton and maybe FL Studio. But with Logic, trying to bounce stems through the master bus processing, you still have to do it one by one. But with this software, um, I don't have to at least sit here and do it. I can just set it up to run, hit
Like a
run, and
batch.
then
Yeah.
yeah, but I can't do anything else on my computer while it's doing it. So it's like, that's fine. I can go do laundry or wash
That's
dishes
okay. Yeah,
or,
yeah, whatever.
yeah.
I mean, that would be great to be able to just kind of set it and like have the parameters of what type of mixes you want and have it do it. That would be really cool.
You know what? I might have to talk to this company and say, hey, I've heard that there's a need for this in Pro Tools. Maybe they should give me a cut. Well, which in all fairness, they gave me a beta test for free.
Oh, cool. That's
So,
cool.
so I guess I should say what it is. It's for anyone's interested. Check in the comments. Actually, I'll leave it at that. When I post this on YouTube, check in the comments on YouTube, or in the description. I'll include a link for that software because it will be an affiliate link. So I won't say what it is, but yeah, it's a great software. So anything to save us time, save us effort, where we don't have to sit here and do things manually. Other than the actual creation of the music, I think that still needs to be a manual process.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
anything else like on the mastering side and things like that that help get to that
Well,
endpoint faster.
I don't know how long it's going to be this way, but have you noticed with the AI stuff, even as good as it sounds, it still has a little graininess to it. It's not
Yeah.
super high def. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I beta tested some AI, not Udio or Suno, but some AI platforms
Oh yeah.
um
I did
gener
Udio. Yeah.
generating music and uh and it was just like it's okay. Like I could use that as a base and build off that, but to like just use it as is and submit it to a library, like nah, I'd have to add some stuff to it or use it as
No.
inspiration as a jumping start. Yeah.
Well, the way people are actually using it right now, creating these absolutely ridiculous songs, it reminds
Yeah.
me of when the royalty-free libraries came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember, like people are literally doing like songs of just people burping or, bodily
Yeah.
functions. And it's like, okay, this is not where I want my music to be,
Yeah. Yeah. And I've
you
seen
know?
some that have been like funny, like some entertaining ones where they take like a current song, like they might take a current pop song and they do like an 80s or like a 20s version of it, 1920s
Right.
with
Now that's
AI.
cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Like yeah.
That's
So I
more
think
a
there's some
creative use.
yeah, I think there's some creative but then again, like if you want to sync that, who owns the copyright or who,
Right. Or Beach Boys swearing all over their albums. I saw that one too.
yeah, so
It's like, okay, this is, you're not helping
yeah,
people take this seriously. You know what I mean? It's like, and so that's
yeah,
kind of like where I was actually, I love technology because I come from IT and cybersecurity. I always like to use technology, probably like you, to
mhm,
like, where can it help me become more efficient? And is it cool? Is it useful?
yeah, yeah,
And so I was kind of disappointed with the AI generative music when I saw people just doing really silly stuff with it. And then
yeah,
the graininess, and some of the vocals were really great. And then some of them were really, I don't know, warped sounding. And so I know that's just a matter of time before that's all, fixed, to
yeah.
where we can't tell that it's, AI generated. So,
Yeah, yeah. And there's some if I ever have a meeting with these AI companies, there's some use cases where I could really use AI.
right,
For example, like I have songs with artists that are great songs, but sometimes I have pitches where they need the other uh gender. So like let's say I have a male rapper on a song, but I'm pitching to something where they need a female rapper. If I could
right.
put this thing in AI and convert the male rapper to female rapper, and I know there's software out there now, but if there was a free software that I could use for that, that would be for me a huge like game changer. If I could have AI make some of these, there's some libraries that want like 30-second versions of the song. If I could plop a 2-minute song in there and the AI gives me a 30-second, 60-second, 15-second, or yeah.
Yeah.
So
And we could
that
even
stuff
have
I would
that.
love.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. I would actually like that as well, because you could even have that built in with the original artist that they're okay with you doing that,
Yeah.
and it's still in the split sheets, that will happen. You can
Yeah.
have an
Yeah.
AI clause in the split sheet that says that you agree that this is okay, but you still get your side of the royalties. You're not going to
Yeah.
get stricken from the royalties just because we changed the gender, right? For a
Yeah.
pitch,
Yeah.
so that could be also worked out. That's an
Yeah.
easy one for me.
Yeah. So like if I ever like, especially if I could have a meeting with like Apple, because
Oh
there's some
yeah,
things with Logic I would have them like, and they're easing more into it. Like they have the AI stuff now. They have the stem splitter. A lot of DAWs are putting stem splitters built into the DAW. So
yeah. Pro
giving
Tools is always behind in that.
Pro Tools behind.
You
So you
know,
still got to use RX or whatever you use for that. But I was
well,
using
there's
RX.
Lala. This
Yeah,
is an
that's free.
online.
That
Yeah.
was free, right? That's
Well, no,
free.
not anymore. Not
Oh,
anymore.
they changed it. Okay.
They changed it. Yeah. You got to
That
buy
was
time
free.
on the conversion block. Yeah.
Okay. There was one called Audio Shakers, I think, that was free at a time also.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, there's options out there, but I think in time all DAWs will have that function built in at
Oh,
least.
they
Uh,
will. They will. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. They
like
will.
to be
Pro Tools will be
competitive.
last, like always. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'll one more call for any questions for those in the chat, if you want to drop a question. But otherwise, man, thank you, Luke. If people wanted to connect with you or work with you, if they're like, hey, I need a composer for a project, how can they reach out to you or follow you on social media? Any links, any courses you have, any
abs
packs?
absolutely. So I'm always happy to have people, join me offline or online. Throughout all of social media, it's Luke Truan Music. Add the @ sign, and you'll find me that way. Or you can go luketruanmusic.com to my website, hit the connect page, check out any work. And then also like simple stuff like if you need strings or piano for a project, I do session work like that as well. Sometimes it's for percentage, sometimes it's upfront fee. I'm very flexible in that type of stuff. And then in terms of teaching, I do one-on-one teaching, and I am rolling out some educational video on demand stuff. I'm going to be doing like stuff like how to use disco more effectively, what is metadata, what is sync, how to do drums, different things, and like on-demand videos and stuff like that. And then I actually have a book out, two different ebooks out, which are going to be put on my website pretty soon for links and stuff like that. So there's going to be a whole educational, new tab coming out.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know what else you should add to your uh, list of services and products is a Pro Tools template for those who um,
Yes, that's coming as well.
I'm about to say
Yes.
for those who are like surprised that you can make music in Pro Tools, like if you have your orchestral template or your uh, other types of
Trailer
templates, yeah,
template.
trailer templates, yeah,
Yeah,
um,
I can keep it. I actually am going to release a template, and actually I'm going to do an on-demand training of creating a template.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I have a couple of those, so I have templates that I use for. Um, I actually use it for troubleshooting, but I have templates like of all of my Spitfire audio instruments. So it's like, hey, if something's not working, I open up this session of all the Spitfire audio instruments, and I can go in one by one and be like, okay, what's going on with these instruments? I have one for my heavy OC instruments, but then also, of course, as I mentioned earlier, I have one for the different styles of music I make. But yeah, I actually. I used to sell templates and then I stopped selling them because I switched my site over to a new site. But then recently someone asked me like, hey, like I posted videos on YouTube about the templates. They're like, hey, I want to buy your Logic Pro template. And now I got to put it back up on the site. So yeah,
Yep,
templates are a
yep.
great way to help others, figure out. And then of course they can tweak it for their own needs. So
And
definitely,
that's how I look at it too. It's kind of like, when you're starting, I wish I had a template to kind of look at. It's
yeah,
like, how does a pro composer structure their orchestra template?
yeah.
Like what instruments are they using? Because I don't know about you, but in Pro Tools, that there's like a comment section near the track,
Yep.
right at the bottom
Mhm.
of the track or off to the side of the
Yep.
track. So what I do is I put the actual pathway to the instrument in that comment
Mm,
section. So
okay.
if it ever corrupts, I know exactly what instrument was used and how to go find it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's one of my tricks
that's
because
actually pretty smart.
I
Yeah.
came up with this idea when I lost an entire template. And I was
Mm,
like, I have no idea what instruments I was using.
yeah.
It put me back so far. And I was like, this is never going to happen again. And so I came up with this idea about the comment section. Literally, it's like if it's heaviosity, I'll go
Mhm.
heavy pads and then the name of the pad or, whatever the path is to get there.
Mhm.
And then it'll be like pretty detailed about what the actual articulation is at the end.
Oh, got it. Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's smart. Most of the instruments I use are all in the same contact. Most of the contact instruments I use are all in the same location. Um, and I try not to add too many now, other than the two percussion libraries that are coming out this week. Too many libraries that are like, a terabyte big because it's like, I don't, do I really need it? And then that's a lot of space. So now it's like those, once you have like a certain amount of libraries, you mentioned 1,600 pianos and like 2,000 instruments. It's like half, I probably use like 50 of the plugins I have,
Right,
thousands
right.
of
It's
the
not all
thousands
of
of
them.
plugins I have. Even to the point where around this time I need to go through, usually around Black Friday, I purge, go through the plugins I have. Like, what have I not used over the last year? Let me put them, like, not delete them, but delete them from my main computer, but put them on like the external hard drive. Um,
Oh, okay. I got
and
you.
if I need them, maybe I'll open them back up. But very rarely do I need to go back to old sounds. So I'm getting newer sounds and better sounds and different plugins. And usually now these days, when I finish a track, I convert all the MIDI to audio, so I at least have the audio as backup if I need to get mixes and things. And then I back up the sessions to
I guess
external
I
hard
do
drive,
that too,
Google
because
Cloud,
when I'm making stems, I have every single
audio. Yep,
instrument, like available. So
yeah, yeah. Um, So yeah, we can go on and on, but Luke, thank you. Appreciate your time. This will be live on YouTube probably over the next day or two. So if you missed anything, we will post this on YouTube. Thank you for checking out this podcast. Also, check out the links when this is live on YouTube. Check out the links in the description for all the fun stuff. Join the Facebook group. Also, I'm launching a community. Hopefully, sync community where I'll be going live, showing the production process, much like I do in the workshops. But this will be for people in that community where you can join the monthly membership and you can actually watch these for free. So, yeah, just figuring out this whole music thing, this whole life and music as we
that's right.
go about it all. But thank you, Luke. Appreciate your time, and
Yeah, thank you too. It's always great to chat.
yeah, same. And we'll be in touch.
All right, man. Later.
All right, later. Have a good day, everyone. Peace.